Healing Justice, a Framework for Collective Healing and Well-Being from Systemic Traumas by Brooke Bosley, Christina Harrington, Susanna Morris, and Christopher Ladantek. During the summer of 2020, thousands of individuals protested across the United States and globally for Black Lives Matter legislation and equitable COVID-19 practices. These practices were a reminder of the generational trauma and violence that have plagued Black communities. 18-year-old Darnella Frazier expressed these emotions during her testimony in the trial of police officer Derek Chauvin for the murder of George Floyd. Frazier stated, "It's been nights I stayed up apologizing to George Floyd for not doing more and not physically interacting." Many Black people like Frazier are left with trauma and guilt from police interactions to constantly seeing these stories through their social media. Policing requires community-driven design solutions. Equitable approaches to community safety require interventions not driven by white supremacist lens. Race and technology scholars attest that these traumas occur within technology design too. Since algorithmic systems are racialized and operate from white supremacist lens, they argue that methodologies grounded in humanities and activism, like healing justice, Black feminism, and Afrofuturism, are critical in addressing equitable technology design. 3 critical research questions guided our study. 1. What are the attributes and features of tools that help Black communities heal from police brutality? 2. How can Black joy become a tool for healing? And last, could methods of healing justice and Afrofuturist feminism offer guidance for designing tools that center joy and healing? To answer these questions, 10 participants who identified as Black or African American living across the Southeast United States completed 3 self-guided design activities and participated in a workshop on police brutality. Historical precedent suggests that a healing justice framework leads to collective, grassroots, and pragmatic designs. The framework was coined by Kindred's Healing Justice Collective. They call 4 ways healing occurs: from labor, body, land, and spirit, which is also our ways of knowing. Designing through a healing justice lens recognizes that technology design will continue to perpetuate white supremacy unless it addresses the collective trauma impacting Black and Brown communities. We use healing justice as an extension of Afrofuturist and Black feminist scholarship within HCI to allow participants to reimagine community safety. Humanities scholar Susanna M. Morris first introduced Afrofuturist feminism to describe the intersections of Black feminism and Afrofuturism in combating white supremacy, violence, survival, oppression, and other elements. Afrofuturist feminism is Black livability. When applied to design, a healing justice framework extends Afrofuturist feminism by tackling systemic racism, generational traumas, violence, and other inequities. To explore this framework and its potential for design, we conducted a series of design workshops with 10 Black Americans across the United States. Our study found methods of Afrofuturist feminism and a healing justice framework field participants to envision community safety outside of the racist and ableist policing practices, and instead grounded in the healing for the present. Our research makes the following contributions. 1. Design workshops that apply healing justice to design interventions focused on policing in the United States. The second, an application of considering Black joy in design and amplifying previous HCI literature. Our work was grounded by 3 areas of literature: civic engagement, Afrofuturism in HCI, and healing justice and tenets of joy. Designing for civic engagement has explored various aspects of citizen and community participation to empower people to take part in shaping their societal conditions and environments. Literature in HCI includes designing for people's relationship between government and public tools to designing technology for local citizens. Case studies of groups engaging with complex and political issues may also be seen in the emergence of Afrofuturism and HCI and interaction design methodology. Various scholars contend that frameworks like Afrofuturism allow for more empathetic engagement with race and political issues in design, and thus may have promise for areas of civic engagement. The last area was focused more on Black and Brown communities' experience with trauma and violence from practices like policing. The Healing Justice framework addresses the root of trauma and violence through techniques like tenets of joy that counter these experiences. Healing Justice and Tenets of Joy is a current untapped research area in HCI. HCI research looks at self-healing and self-preparedness in computerized systems. The recent article from Harrington and colleagues titled Designing for the Black Experience argues that HCI research needs to engage with Black communities outside of areas of trauma-stricken ideals by centering joy, happiness, and love. Two tenets of joy are pleasure and cultural memory, identified through scholarship around Black and African American identity in the United States. Designing for Civic Engagement, Afrofuturism in HCI, and Healing Justice and Tenets of Joy introduced decolonized research approaches among HCI literature. The literature from the related works was foundational in building a study that focused on healing from generational trauma and violence. The solutions fostered healing and joy by anchoring the study in community-driven approaches. Our studies sought to understand the main attributes and features of tools tackling trauma, like policing, and how healing justice as an extension of Afrofuturist feminism can guide interventions that center healing and Black joy. The study occurred virtually due to COVID-19 from February to April 2021. The virtual format allowed us to gain insight into healing justice as a design intervention and build a research environment that fostered creativity through workbook activities, workshops, and surveys. The format was also meant to follow the structure of transformative justice organizers use when developing community-based strategies around safety. To identify participants for this study, we deployed a screening survey to gauge time commitment, comfortability, and willingness to share experiences. Participants also completed 3 workbook activities, a pre- and post survey, and attended 1 2-hour design workshop. In the spirit of Afrofuturist feminism, the design activities focused on the past, present, and future. The first activity, grounded in the past, had participants design a storyboard retelling their experience with the Black Lives Matter protests of 2020. The present prompted individuals to create a program or digital tool that could bring healing or joy to a community in response to traumatic experiences. Last, we asked participants to consider how the pandemic and policing could impact the near future, or year 2025, through creating collage. The 10 participants were split into an average of 3 groups across 3 2-hour design workshops. We incorporated healing justice in the workshops through reflections, meditations, and moments of rest that allowed participants to express joy, grief, and rage. The practice of healing justice gave participants a safe space to discuss the impacts of trauma like policing and the ways they could be integrated in their daily lives. The workshop activities incorporated this approach and integrated breaks and group reflections. The critical findings were defunding and abolishment of police. The second was boundaries as an act of self-care, creating Black joy after trauma, and 4 lived experiences also were critical in impacting the designs. These themes correlate with the critical questions we sought to answer at the beginning of the study. The discussions of the work focused on healing-centered design interventions and the difficulties of grappling with trauma-based problems like policing. Now more than ever, we need solutions that seek to tackle the generational trauma and violence that Black and Brown communities are constantly experiencing. The need for healing justice in design as intervention and Black joy as a design practice, as well as self-advocacy as a tenet of joy. Set out to understand the attributes and features of tools that help Black communities heal from police brutality. The design workshops and workbooks incorporated methods of healing justice as an extension of Afrofuturist feminism to help facilitate these conversations. As designers seek to create interventions in complex problems like policing, we need more approaches that work through a healing justice framework.